Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Philip Ramos here in the Strength Studio, doing another interview here on the Spotlight series. Super excited to have with me today John Busch. I actually not too long ago did an interview with his wife, so super excited to do this one next. I think they have an incredible story, incredible family, very like-minded people in what they do. So I think this is going to be a wonderful interview to kind of pair with, and for you guys to kind of see from one person's perspective versus another person's perspective. So, John, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. I know you are a busy man between your kids and wife and business and all that different stuff. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, before we get any further, what I want to do is just give you some time to kind of introduce yourself. You know, when we met together, it was kind of the first time I had an opportunity to ask questions and stuff, but I'm sure so many people, want to know about you, want to know your story, want to know where it all started, what got you onto the road of the family that you have, your wife, where you're currently at, and where are you headed now as an entrepreneur yourself. So give us an opportunity to get to know you a little bit.
Oh, that's a good question. My wife and I always joke that like right with 9 kids, 5 boys and 4 girls, it's a big family. She planned a few, I planned a few, and we're like, that's how we got to 9. Like it's just kind of funny to see like, okay, maybe we didn't plan the same one. So it's kind of funny. I'm a dad, 40 years old, and I love life. Like I love being a dad. I love that part of life. For the last decade and a half, I've been involved in the health and wealth space. Period of time as a life insurance agent, and then over the last decade, more specifically, more just the health and wellness, supplementation, all kinds of great stuff, natural, holistic kind of healing world. And it's been exciting to see what growth that has brought out of me. So done my best to stay in that space, and it's brought some really cool relationships, stay very purpose driven in that area and arena, what we can educate our kids with, kind
Hmm.
of help them be empowered even. And I love everything about that. So it drives me day to day. That's a great driver. I guess if we go back into like my own family, I've got one sister, so nowhere near 9 siblings. And I saw my dad hustle and put the time in, and he was a mechanic, factory worker, um, awesome blue collar man, like family man, coached my ball teams. But that was the hustle for 40 years. So I saw him sacrifice and learned an incredible work ethic from him, and always seemed to be happy and smiling
Hmm.
and pleasant. And I didn't realize that what went on behind the scenes until you kind of grow up and move into adulthood and see
Sure.
people that choose different paths and different disciplines to appreciate really how beat up his body got over the years choosing that path, and some other things that I know were difficult for him that I don't know if it was the time frame of like maybe it was a little bit more taboo to share what he was going through. They just kind of like right grin and bear it, but to appreciate what it is that he's did for myself, my sister, to mold me into the man that I've become. So super ton of appreciation for my father. And as I've connected with more men over the years, I've learned just how rare that is, that gift that I truly got from my dad, and how many men did not have that. It's one of my drivers now, one of the reasons I love creating deeper relationships with men and connecting with them and anywhere along the gamut, right? Collaboration, mentorship. I realize a lot of men were really struggling in
Yeah.
that arena, and how well we can serve each other when we all show up in our strengths, our gifts, our talents to kind of blend and really lift each other.
I love it. One of the opportunities I had in doing when we first met together in our pre-interview, and you talked a lot about that, and I'm glad you brought up your dad. There was vulnerability, I guess, is probably the word that kind of came up, often, and it's not fairly common, right, amongst, I think, men, or maybe even a safe space for people to feel that way, whether men or women.
Yeah.
And I love that, all that you do and all that you creating, that seemed to always be something that kind of came up. And what a beautiful thing to incorporate into, obviously, not just probably in your home life, or in what you did, with whether healthcare, or as a health coach, but really, what you do on a day to day basis with, as you make those connections. I think That's incredible. That's incredible. And again, not something that always gets to come up when, especially when talking with other entrepreneurs. It's not I would say, a common word. Especially some of the interviews that I've done with other men. And so I love that. That's a big part of what you do.
It is. It is, and a huge appreciation. Some of my best friends I know, we've talked at length about their examples or lack thereof, and or more examples of what not to do. And there's definitely been some things that I've tried to up level from my
Sure.
father. So, right, there's been traditions, and I'm like, okay, that one can continue on. I'm like, that one probably needs to die with me. Like, we all have those things that we're supposed to grab onto and do better with. So, my dad's far from perfect, just as I am, but it's
Sure.
been great to have that kind of a foundation. I did not realize for a long time, until probably my mid 30s, what an advantage that was for me in life. So it's, yeah, huge, huge blessing and super grateful.
I love it. Well, with that being said, as you're moving forward now, not just as a business owner, not just as a father, husband, all the different things, the hats you wear, how would you say that those things, influence your personal mission, your vision, your direction? Where do you want to go in life, and how does all of that, influence that, impact that?
Yeah. Uh, the level that a man can grow, I think, is going to be, it's going to have a ceiling unless he's really walking a path with God. So I realized that in my early 20s, I had a life-changing, life-altering commitment to God that
Mm.
we didn't even talk about when we first kind of chatted in our pre-interview, but it was a night that I will absolutely never forget.
Wow.
Um, it's I got a peek into my legacy, I would say, or what I wasn't going to create for my legacy in my very early 20s. I worked in an oil refinery. There was a terrible explosion one night, like to the tune of like 13 fire trucks called to the scene and absolute chaos. And in an oil refinery, there's always chatter. There's always talk on the radio. There's always things going on. It was what you would call radio silent. Like there was nobody communicating, nobody talking, everybody into emergency isolation mode, and the things that we practiced to shut down. Um, it wasn't on my unit, but it was a unit probably a few hundred yards from me, and a series of explosions. I was outside isolating some things, and I remember feeling the heat on the back of my neck from one of the explosions, turning it around and seeing the fireball. I'm like, it felt like hot lava just fell on me. Like it felt that close, but
Wow.
that night was super, super scary. I did a lot of committing that night, a lot of praying that night because we didn't know what was going on. The unit that was on fire, that had the explosion, it was one of the last units in the country because all the other ones had blown up. It's just a really volatile product. It's a
Sure.
product that has about a 7 mile blast radius. So
Wow.
my parents live 3 miles away from the refinery. It was a heavy night, right? Like, so in my early 20s, working with some other older gentlemen in their 60s, and we're kind of hustling and doing things together, there was a period, a pretty long period, where there wasn't much else to do other than sit there and pray. I remember making a phone call to my wife at this point, somewhere between probably midnight and 3 a.m. She's sleeping, and left her a voicemail, not knowing if I would see her again the next day. Like, it was getting really, really bad, and we didn't know how bad it was going to get. Um, it's basically in a refinery, you have a really big, kind of like a backyard barbecue grill, right? But a really, really large one. So
Yes.
there's open flames underneath of this heater, and this explosion and this vapor cloud's forming, and that finds an ignition point. And this vessel that was going to lift was that highly volatile chemical, and that would have leveled like the entire area. It would have been devastation for miles and miles. So a couple of brave souls went in that night, were able to safely isolate things, get it to calm down, get some things regulated, and prevent that catastrophe from happening. But that night rocked me to my core. I remember really committing to God that, like, whatever it is that you want from me, right, in the growth world and anything, like, I'll say yes and figure out the rest later.
Sure.
And I look back on it, and I think to me it was an opportunity to think about my legacy in my early 20s and really what I wanted that to become. So I knew there was a lot of growth in my future. I knew there would probably be some continued education, which was funny, but growing up, it was only about sports and how fast can I get out of school and just get to work and do what my dad did. And I thought I was going to run the same path and work for 40 years and, have the weekends and evenings with my family. And I quickly learned, I'm like, there's some other things that I meant to do here, people I meant to connect with. And it's been nothing but growth since then. I would say for the last 19, 20 years since that incident. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the mission now that really is to help men. I would refine it into one sentence, help men really build unbreakable bonds with God, their family, and themselves without feeling weak, burnt out, or alone. Like there's that last little part has taken some refining over the last few years because I really, really care about men having that spiritual walk with God because I think it elevates our capacity and what we can do in life.
Mhm.
Um, Family is absolutely essential to how we connect and how we lead and what our kids see and the example we set. So many things there, but it's also just as important for what we do for ourselves, how we talk to ourselves,
Right.
how we think about ourselves, the people we surround ourselves with, how we spend our time or don't spend our time. But I see a lot of men walking. This is the reason for that last part is they're feeling weak. They're feeling beaten down. They're feeling absolutely burnt out and exhausted, and they're feeling alone. And there are days that I'm tired, a lot of days that I'm tired. We've got a big family and it's hard, but there's a higher knowledge to know that you can lean on what God. He's always there for you to have built a circle of brotherhood. Like my circle's gotten smaller, but it's grown very intentional. So I'm grateful for the vulnerability that I've been able to step into and what that lends me to support me as a man. So my hope and desire is to be able to have other men know that can be there for you. Like you can, with a little bit of courage, a little bit of bravery in that arena, you can tap into other people that'll be in your corner so you don't have to walk that path solo.
Wow. What an incredible experience to draw strength from, in those moments where what we think are important,
Yep.
right? What we in those moments, calling your wife, leaving that voicemail, there's different things become important, right? And they help us center ourselves and really shift. And obviously, that was a very impactful moment in your life, which has probably bled out and rippled out into everything that you do now. From that and your mission, where you started, where it all kind of came from, what do you think are so for me, like if you're speaking to me as a man, and I'm sure many other men that are watching this, what are some of the tools or the systems or maybe even the non-negotiables to help you keep it all together in the face of 9 kids, right? In the
Yeah.
face of spending time with your family, in the space of like your oldest daughter getting married, in the space of all the different things you have going on, just launching a new business, all the different thing that you guys have going on. What are some of those tools or non-negotiable constructs that you're like, okay, structurally, you need these things in order to keep going at the pace you're going and
Yeah.
be able to have that output? What are some of those things for you?
My brain works in like acronyms and usually things that rhyme and kind of simple
Okay.
principle based kind
Yeah.
of models.
Yeah.
So for me, it's boiled down to three words. They all start with A. It keeps it really clear, but it also was something that came to me and I feel was very inspired in 2020. And it's in this order specifically. It's awareness, accountability, and action. So those three A words drive what I do. It's easy to give me that benchmark to step back to. If
Mhm.
it's something new that I have to do, learn, and figure out, I know that there's going to be a period of awareness. I know it's going to be, it might sting a little bit at first. It might be more difficult. You get back to the gym, your muscles are a little bit more sore. Like you kind of have that period of adjustment. And for me, that's the awareness phase. The accountability phase is it's twofold, really threefold. It's accountability to God, it's accountability to myself, and it's also an accountability to others. So I look for people that can be in my corner to help me move forward because we all have those days that we just want to stop, accept defeat. We think it's easier to, just not resist and just stay in complacency and resist that change, and that's the easier path when actually the absolute opposite is true. It
Right.
will
Right.
be, it will, it seems hard now, right? You can choose hard now, hard for a moment, or a hard life. Like it's really that clear to me. And I could see that. I'm like, my dad worked for 40 years. Like that was a hard life. And it's been challenging over the last 20 years. But I know that I'm a different father today for my kids, my 5 and 7 year old, than I was for my kids 20 years ago. Like
Right.
I'm a completely different person. And sometimes I apologize for that. Some days I'm like, hey, sorry, you got a different version of dad, older kids, and the younger kids, they're like, oh man, dad's so cool. And like he wasn't always this cool. He wasn't always emotionally regulated and,
Yeah.
calm and patient and learn how to help you talk through things. Like this has been some work, some serious work, but it's absolutely worth it. Is our family not worth that kind of work? So for me, it's awareness, it's accountability, and then action is like that's where we go. That's where faith is. Faith is a verb. It's really getting into putting things into motion that you know that you need to lean into. So I look for whatever it is that I'm doing, I'll run that process. I'll run awareness, accountability, and action. Whether it is a physical goal for me, whether it's a business goal, a family goal, whatever it is, it kind of falls within those three principles, and I run that in order.
I love that, and that kind of framework. I like using that word because it's super important. I think that so many times, whether entrepreneurs that I meet, people that are trying to juggle different things in life, when they, the ones that are successful versus the ones that aren't successful, typically some sort of framework, right, helps us balance ourselves on that. And when I interviewed your wife, she mentioned three things that some of the most successful, doTERRA advocates have. Number one is vision. Number two was commitment. And then number three was consistency. And so when we can identify these things and create framework in our lives, we find so much more. I guess we can ground ourselves, right? We're stable when things do get rocked. When we become, when we're maybe off kilter, we're like, oh wait, where am I? And you
Yep.
can go back to, and I love it, your awareness, your accountability, and your action. And one thing you mentioned a lot when we talked the first time, you mentioned motion and not
Mm.
just physical movement, but oh, sorry, you mentioned movement. I apologize. You mentioned movement, and
Yep.
that I see how that relates back to your action, right? How important that is. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's one thing when you look at, you mentioned the awareness a bit, you mentioned of course the accountability, but where in that action, what does that look like for you to take action there?
Yeah. The movement for me has been an essential component. It's been where I have found some people call it meditation, some people call it, that quiet time where you can really just ponder and reflect. The movement for me most often, I would say 75, 85% of the time is the quiet hours of the morning before the family is awake, somewhere between 5 and 6:30, starting some days it's a walk, some days it's yoga. It's usually at least 3 days a week of some sort of resistance band, weight training, something along those lines to really stress the muscles as well. And that has been so incredibly therapeutic for me because one of those science principles, right? Like an object at rest stays at rest. I feel like for me, it literally, like, even physically, like my body feels better, I eat better, I think better, my thoughts are better, I feel better about myself. I know that first thing I did for the day was hard, but most often, especially in those resistance training days, whatever I'm going to deal with the rest of the day will pale in comparison to what it is that I just put myself through intentionally first thing in the morning.
Mhm.
And the rest of the day kind of just flows from there. So for me, that cues and sets everything else up to know that that kind of self-love and care, that I made myself a priority, and it makes me a better father and a better husband. So movement, yeah, movement for me is it's an essential component. And I'm almost don't care what form. Like it, right? Somebody
Sure.
loves swimming, somebody loves walking, somebody else loves running. Like I have the things that feel the best to me in the areas that I love to move in, but it's typically either a walk with a weighted vest. It is going to be some form of stretching and yoga because I've played so many sports in my life that like my body just hurts. And when I stretch, it's just kind of like that butter injection into your joints that feels so good that if you do that consistently and stick with it, your body starts to respond in a way that just feels so healing and therapeutic. So, the weight training, I just genuinely love that kind of a challenge to see where you're at and just kind of measure and have that reference point to get back to. So, movement is it's essential. I've tried to put that into fatherhood as well. It's created some opportunities for me to work out with my older sons now that and there was years of resistance. But you mentioned disciplining, you mentioned consistency, and some
Yeah.
of those I never really, now you can kind of see and look back and kind of reflect and see how powerful some of those examples were. Me sticking with that routine, me sticking with good people around me that also valued this kind of movement and physical exertion and things like that, and challenged me to read this next book. And I now see my 17-year-old. He's like, "Hey, Dad, I haven't worked out today. Like, I really don't feel good. Like, can you think of anything, or what can I do for this, or I want to work this muscle group?" Like, it's developed conversations and connecting a different way. I'm like, man, they were always watching. They were always, always watching. So I'm grateful for that. And sometimes I laugh at God and I think that like, man, did I need that much accountability that you've got me nine children plus a wife, so 10, 20 sets of eyeballs. Like that's a lot of eyeballs on like what it is that I'm doing. That's a lot of opportunities to be incredibly accountable. Like, oh, is dad full of crap? Does he actually walk his talk? Like
Yes.
all to my down to my 5-year-old, like, well, why are you eating ice cream for breakfast? Why can't I eat ice cream for breakfast? I'm like, you're right. Like it's daily accountability. With a big family, you get away with nothing. I swear the kids hear a chip bag open or something like that, right? They could be outside and they hear it. So that I think is I'm appreciative for staying consistent on that over the years, staying moving, and it's really allowed me to see some of that perspective as things start to come full circle right now. We do have a daughter getting married, and her husband's a mechanic, or soon to be husband's a mechanic, and he's like, "Hey, this kind of hurts," or that kind of. I'm like, "It's an opportunity to build your core so that you can continue to do this work," and I've learned these exercises over the years, so grateful for that and what that's done for me. And people find therapy and healing in all different ways, but that's absolutely been my path.
I love it, man. 20 eyes of accountability. I'm gonna always remember that one now.
It's a lot.
I think that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, one of the things going back to, your mission, and you talked a lot about, what drives you, and you mentioned this thing about, men and what you feel called to do, inspired. One of the things in coming from where I came from as a corporate trainer, one of my biggest things that I was tasked, if you will, to identify was how well-being dramatically impact people's output, right? Their bandwidth, and we looked at it from an emotional, physical, and a mental perspective.
Yep.
And it was very measurable, extremely measurable, not just within our organization, but with just companies, all 90% of Fortune 500 companies that Gallup has measured this. It impacts the workforce, it impacts their ability, their goals, everything by roughly about 400%. So people that had tools to be able to do that dramatically increase their productivity, which is ultimately what a lot of businesses, right, they value that bottom line. Of course, it's how they stay in business. Now,
Yep.
with you, and as again, 20 eyeballs right on you from an accountability perspective,
Yep.
but you have the things that you have to do as a dad, as an entrepreneur. When you look at men that are facing these roles in their lives and what they're struggling with, how do you see, what are some of the main focuses that you're focusing on in helping men? Because and because you see the struggle, right? You see where they're struggling.
Yeah.
So where you see them struggling, what are some of the ways that you feel like that you're part of your mission? How can you help them? How can what are some of the tools, or what are some of the things that you're identifying that men really need in their life, and that you see part of your mission, fulfilling that?
Yeah, that's almost a little bit of a loaded question because every man is in such a different path, and our level of acceptance and what we're willing to step into awareness of is
Yeah,
different for each
yeah,
guy. They're at a different place on the journey. So for me, empathy is really, really high, and I've always prided myself on taking time to like listen. People have mentioned that throughout my life. Like it's just naturally, right? That's what the strengths are. Like it's like empathy first, strategic, discipline, developer, responsibility. Like I know my top five pretty well, but
yeah,
that empathy I've learned to really appreciate over the years and how easy it is for me to sit here and connect with where another man is because I've had a variety of jobs all over the gamut from
mhm,
white collar, blue collar, and everywhere in between. To sit and listen and connect with a guy when
yeah,
they can feel safe, like that's the first step. Like
mm,
it's usually just if they create a safe space and that's one of their first few times in their life that they've had that kind of an experience and they feel totally safe to share something personal or what they're struggling with or whatever. Like I've talked to men in their 20s, I've talked to men in their 60s that have been holding on to stuff for decades. Like it's such a responsibility for me to have that kind of an opportunity to create a safe space. So that's my first goal is to be that. And it's hard to be that if I don't do what it is that I need to build myself up because it's
yeah,
different to sit and listen to a man, or we could have a conversation, and I don't need to take on all of your burdens, Philip. Like I don't need to own those personally. You've got your path, you'll have your challenges
Sure.
and things that you'll persevere through.
Sure.
That's part of your path, but to connect, to create that safe bubble is it's powerful. So I see that as a responsibility, and it's a fine line, right? Not to override somebody's agency and
Right.
their own accountability, because the more the joke that I tell my kids, it's like your why's got to be bigger than your butt. And they're like, Dad, what does that even mean? Like, I don't have a big butt. And I'm like, your why has to be bigger than your butt. Like one day you'll figure it out. So your reason for doing it has to be so much bigger than your excuses for not. So I
Exactly.
try I try to step into roles where I can just sit and listen and ask people questions, because a lot of times that answer is already in there. Guys most often know what it is that they need to do or stop doing or eat or stop eating or how often they should be moving or not. Like there's enough information right now that we're kind of on information overload. So that's why I say it's a loaded question. I almost hesitate to give you specifics, and I know that's what you're looking for, but a few things that have mattered to me: journaling, movement,
Mm.
really putting pen to paper and actually working through stuff in a healthy way, so that you can be like, hey, is that my thought? Is that some other, force in there trying to push me in a direction? Is this just me being a little bit scared and working through
Sure.
emotions? Like, it's been so healing and healthy for me to put pen to paper in question format specifically and articulate, because our brain's a truth seeker and it always wants to give us the evidence or find the evidence. So I've learned how to continue to refine and ask better questions, so that when I sit with men, they feel safe and we create a safe space. I'm able to ask deeper, better questions that are going to elicit hopefully some motivational um, what's the right word? Some motivational, like just some movement towards growth, some movement towards really them realizing, okay, this is my deeper purpose. This is something that I can really lean into,
Right.
and it's going to be worth the effort for me to overcome all of these excuses that I'm going to throw myself, right? They kind of they have to find that why. They have to grow their why, and most people just have a way bigger butt than they do a why. So
Sure.
for me, journaling, for me, movement. The other analogy that I like to use is BNI. I know there's networking groups out there that call that, but I think of
Yeah.
this as like somebody to be bold, somebody to nurture, and somebody that inspires me. So almost
Mm.
daily, I'm looking for somebody that I can be bold with. Is there somebody out there that I can challenge, that I know I can see another man that is walking a path and I'm like, I was there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 60 days ago. Like it doesn't matter. But you know that you're walking a path that you can see somebody else and they just might be a little bit farther behind you on the path. And it doesn't mean they're doing worse or whatever. They're just walking it at a different pace. And I love the vision. I ran cross country in high school of the gun would go off and we're all lined up. And there is hundreds on a state meet or something like that, hundreds, sometimes thousands of guys launch. But when we all come through that finish line, spaced out, one after the other, after the other, after the other. So I think about that visually and how collectively so many of us start with amazing intentions and we all start together. But somewhere along the line, like we just kind of wind up running the race in a different time. We're just going to finish at a different time.
Yeah.
So, who can I be bold with? Is there something that I've already learned that I can share with somebody? Who can I nurture? And who can I get inspiration from? Is there somebody that I can look to today as a mentor to challenge myself? That's really helped me. And into my 40s now, I've learned to set some pretty good boundaries. So I would challenge men to do that as well. Like, I think sometimes women get called out more for it, for people pleasing and trying to make everybody happy and stuff like that. But man, men do it. We do it. The
Some.
challenge, the, the challenge with men when they do it is that like we do it without the right tools in our toolbox. We just want to
Right.
run in and jump and try to fix the problem. And I'm like, they didn't even say they wanted your help.
Yeah.
This is their burden. This is their fight. Like, if they're asking you to fight with them, that's a totally different scenario than you trying to run in with the toolbox and you don't even know what it is that you're trying to throw in the situation. So it's hard. It's hard for us as men to sit and be still and watch somebody else in it. But there's moments where we actually need to just be like, that's part of their journey. Like that's I've done all I can. At this point, I'm going to back it up and pray for them. They've got to really pull that from deep, and the boundaries kind of comes in there that we think that we need to make everybody happy or please everybody along the path. Or like I've had a lot of people. fall away. And that's sad at times. And it
Sure.
doesn't, good or bad, it's no judgment on them. It's just that either we've grown in different directions, right? Or some people haven't grown, or like it just, but you're in charge of your own sphere and your own circle. So that to me has been really, really important. But yeah, the sooner that you can start to say no, that's a full sentence, set some boundaries, not feel the need to explain yourself. Powerful stuff happens.
Yeah. I love, as I'm listening to you, because I'm going back to what you talked about, your three A's, when you talked about your awareness, your accountability, and your action. And one of the things within our framework, right, it's always important for us to have tools. And you mentioned the toolbox. And listening to you, and you talked about, the awareness of the journaling, right, or figuring out where you're at and that sort of thing. And then the accountability, of course, not just with your family, but when you talked about, when developing that relationship with a person, right, meeting with them with your empathy and that eye to eye, and then of course whatever action may follow that. And so I, sitting here as you're talking, I'm like, oh, what would it look like for me to engage in a framework like that, and how can I see that as a man myself, right, as an entrepreneur myself, as provider for my family, as a husband, father, and all the different things that I'm doing. And so it's neat to see, as you're talking about all those different things, as I'm, I don't know if it's compartmentalizing it, but putting them into these categories. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see myself in that. I can see myself in that. And so it's neat to see that everything you're talking about, your stories and what you're sharing, I find myself, right, going through that AA process of like, okay, where is the awareness here, and how is this, creating some level of accountability, and then what's the action that's being taken here. And so it's neat that you can hear everything you're doing very much line into that mission, that purpose. That's amazing.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And then I would say for guys that are absolutely stuck too, this is probably the final detail that we should throw in at this segment is yes, movement's helped me. Yes, journaling has helped me. Some of that, and that takes time for guys to get comfortable writing stuff down. Like I'm sensitive to that.
Sure.
But if you are absolutely stuck, feeling like you are isolated on an island, a man by your, and just living in that daily story that you've been telling yourself and burnt that line for so long, I had the opportunity to interview an author of a book called The Rewired Brain, Dr. Skeet Chilton.
Hmm.
Super, super cool. A few years back, had a podcast, talked to him about helping other men. Super awesome story.
Hmm.
Learning that we can rewire pathways, learning that we can literally change those, but it does take time. That is a great book. I'd recommend that. But if guys are like absolutely stuck, and don't know where to start, this has always been my go-to, and it's worked every single time. If you can find someone to serve, it could just be one person, it could be a person in your family. You will forget about yourself, your problems, kind of that um, right, that selfish nature that we can easily go into.
Sure.
You will have that melt away. And just the same way it feels so much better. Like it's fun to get a present from somebody that you care about, but how much better does it feel when you give somebody a gift and you see their face and they light up when they open it and you're like, oh, and they know it was something meaningful or something they wanted for a while or were trying to save up for and couldn't make it work. And you're like, you just bless somebody with that. Like that feeling, that's the ultimate dopamine high for me. Like that's the hit that I'm consistently looking for ways to give back and find ways to be able to do that. So what you're doing here is amazing. Like I can see that you're on a similar plane with what you're doing. But man, if you are stuck, if a guy is stuck and you're listening to this, find somebody to serve. An older neighbor next to you is something I've cut grass for older people I've done. Like just do it. Not to do anything, not to expect a reward, not to expect a payment, just because it's something good and pure and it will help you start to get back into the path that you know you're supposed to walk. So just go find somebody to serve, honestly.
I love that. I absolutely love that. What an incredible anchor, right? To kind of connect ourselves to as we go about in discovering the awareness, right? Or looking for things, but that can be an anchor. And obviously from a spiritual perspective, there's a lot of
Right.
scripture, a lot of stories out there, how that begins, that from that experience, right? So many other things blossom and so many things can be experienced and awareness can come from. And so that's what a powerful anchor piece. That's I like that. I like that a lot. Now, a couple things that you've brought up, and I love that you brought it up. And in listening to you, so your top five strengths: empathy, strategic, discipline, developer, responsibility. And you've brought up empathy, discipline, and responsibility in multiple different times as we're talking. And then, of course, your developer of how you see people and how you see the mission and progress and all that great stuff. Where now, when it comes time to your strengths, and I can see them, but for someone else, how do you feel like you owning yourself and again, and going back to that awareness, becoming aware of your strengths, how has this helped you thrive in your business life, in your professional life, in your personal life, and how do you lean on them? How does this help you identify how you thrive, and then how do you really lean into them to continue to grow?
Cool. Yeah, we'll touch on a few. So starting with empathy, I just mentioned boundaries, and we just talked about boundaries and stuff like
Mm,
that.
yeah.
For a while, I was one of those self-identifying people pleasers, and I thought that we had to make everybody happy. So empathy has taught me not only that it's a superpower and when you can listen and kind of create that space for men, but that I can create meaningful connections quick, but
Mm,
not with everyone, with the right people. I'm not looking to connect with all people. I'm looking to connect with the right people. A
yeah.
mutual respect, a mutual exchange of energy, where like somebody else is going to be in your corner just as you're willing to be in theirs. And that really, really that's been revolutionary for me to recognize like, oh, like it's all good. Like that's just not my person. They're just not my people. Like it's okay. My people, if I call them 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I got a family emergency, the basement's flooding, something's going on with one of my kids. They're like, what can I do to help? Give me the time and the place. And I'm like, it's a mutual respect for them. You call me late at night, give me the time and the place.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a brother, right? A friend will tell you what you want to hear, a brother will tell you what you need to hear, and sometimes it stings. That might be your first step into that awareness piece. And it kind of sucks, and you're kind of mad at him for a moment, but like, darn it, he's right. Like I needed that right now. I'm kind of being a jerk. I'm kind of being a little bit, oh, woe is me type of thing. Well, I can't golf 5 times this week. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. Your family needs you right now. You've got a daughter in a crisis. You've got somebody dealing with some big things. Like your
Right.
job is to lead. Like forget golfing. You're not making it on the pro tour. Like that's not your job is to step in and be a freaking awesome father. Like
Yeah.
do that first. And
Yeah.
then you see like, oh, maybe I will actually have time for life because I don't need to raise and then re-raise my kids and then re-raise their kids because I actually took the time to heal the trauma and
Yeah.
handle some of that drama. It was worth the effort on the front end. So empathy has been huge. It's helped me set boundaries. It's helped me listen and create safe places. I think the discipline, strategic and discipline, the routine, like I'm always thinking, but it's helped me refine we talked about questions, especially in my journaling. It's helped me continue to ask better questions and learn how to ask better questions. And some of my sales training, when I did the financial stuff previously and stuff like that, I'd listen to people all the way back to the 1930s and some of these great sales trainers. Super, super cool. I've always been intrigued with asking questions. So I've loved to find myself in places and spaces with people that are way smarter and way cooler than me that I can learn how to ask better questions and try to shorten that learning curve and compress that. And there's people that I have and probably will never meet that I consider mentors in my life. And you start to use those powerful words. And I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, this guy's a mentor for me. He's like, oh, you know him? I'm like, he has no clue that I exist on the planet, but he's my mentor. Like you own it with that level of personalization. I'm like, he's mentoring me. I know there's something that he's going to share with me that is going to impact my life. But again, it's not everything. It's the right thing. It's an hour-long podcast and you get one line out of it. And you're like, that's what I needed today.
Yeah.
Gone. Like I don't need to do these 15 other things that he said. I know where I'm at. I'm confident where I'm at. Run it through my filter. Where am I at right now? I'm a dad of 9 kids. That's a really unique space. So I like to listen to things, which is where strategic comes in, which is where discipline comes in, developer comes in, and all of like it's getting run through a filter, which is why I can take in a lot of content, a lot of information, because I know what it is that I'm looking for out of it. And if it lands, cool. If it doesn't, I'm like, yeah, we'll just, cool. That was a fun little story or ditty or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then just take what I need and go. So it's that feels good. I've appreciated all of those top five strengths and then responsibility. That's funny that that's the fifth because that anchors me in a lot of ways to be still figuring out life in the ways that I want to show up in my family life, financially, the goals that I have, and some things that we're working on. But it has been use the other superpowers, Phil. I'm not even lying. They have gotten us um, the home that we lived in. Like I could see imprints of that in so many aspects of my life that has affected my children and will for the rest of their lives. Like the friends that they've made because we've lived here, that was because of XYZ connection and this and like, and then most of the time I'll boil back to service. Like I did something for someone without knowing anything else, and this cascade of positive benefits that came from that I wasn't looking for was like opened up all these things. And like that's wild to look back and see how it connects back up the chain. Just from like, oh, you need something, you need like just find somebody to serve. And like sometimes that'll just start it. So yeah.
That's strategic empathy right there at its finest. That is absolutely incredible that you have connected those dots. And I think again, not everybody does, right? They don't do it naturally, but you have this way of being able to do that, and that's absolutely incredible. And then going back to what you said, I love that you talked about, questions and learning, right, to ask good questions. Going back to, and I can see why, the awareness, uh, um, of your framework, that first A of being awareness, that's just, that's something that is means so much to you of asking good questions. And that's something that I think I've gained as a strengths coach that I didn't have before. But no, I would say if I could, if someone asked me what was the single greatest thing I've learned from being a strengths coach, it would be I've learned to ask better questions. And I
Yep.
think that
Yep.
that level of awareness, or that importance of learning that information is priceless. And we just don't spend enough time. And I love what you said about connecting with men and your empathy, but that process for you is very natural, and that's amazing, that you do that. That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I can tell you've got a gift there too with the questions, but it takes time and effort, right? Like you've intentionally honed that and refined that. And it's how do you do that if you don't have an awareness of what it is that you're trying to accomplish? So for me, that in my simple brain has kept me clear on what it is that I'm working for. Like the reason that I need to do this, it's kept my why bigger than my butt, right? The reason I'm doing and reading this book is to become a better father so that I can do this better. Like, is it ultimately like I can see how it continues to influence and move along the line. So just keeps it clear in my head. And if it's something I'm really having a hard time with and struggling with, so like food addiction for me, I grew up Italian. Uncles had a restaurant. Two uncles had a restaurant. The family parties were like, my mom was one of five. Her mom was one of 12. Like aunts, uncles, cousins, everywhere. You planned the food, they planned the alcohol, they planned the people. Like it was in that order. I was like, holy smokes. Like, and then the gatherings would just be massive and fun. So for me, like I've wrestled with like, oh man, I have a really deep emotional connection to food.
Right.
What can I do with that? Like,
Yeah.
I can actually learn. I love to cook. I'm like, I really enjoy cooking. I've
Right.
learned how to make really healthy meals. So I've got a 16-year-old. She loves to cook, and we're finding new fun recipes. And we made these key lime pie out of avocados and all like. If it's worth it, if it's really, really worth it, and that's important to you, it doesn't need to be that you're shutting it off. But I
Sure.
had to increase my level of awareness of like, if this is something that matters and really is going to continue to matter, and I want to kind of pass that on to my kids, how do we do it in a healthy way? So that awareness has been huge. It's also allowed me to be like, yep, totally ate the half a container of ice cream tonight. Like, let me give myself some grace. I'm not yet at the place I want to be with this thing, but I'm aware of it. I'm at least aware of it. I'm on the path. I'm starting to walk it out. And the level of awareness allows me to give myself some grace so that I don't go too low and stay down in that depths of despair. And it's so easy. I think more men I don't know if we want to put a gender specific, but we'll just talk just about men. I think more men battle with silent depression. Um, I know for a fact some of the statistics represent this because when we look at the things that are killing us as men, yes, cancer is high, yes, heart disease is high, and some of the biggest killers, but suicide is on the top 10 for men for all ages, races, ethnicities, and the top 10 causes of death for men. Um, Done the homework on this, it's not even in the top 10 for women. So we might joke sometimes, be like, oh, them, they always talk and drama, blah, blah, blah. Like, but it's at least keeping them alive. Men were just like, hey, how's bottling it up and holding on to it working for you? Like,
Right.
it's really not. And then we explode and we have this emotional outburst and we feel guilty about it and feel shame about it. And like, that's not how I want to act around my kids. Or I just threw something and I look like a total loon, like 40 years old and can't control my emotions. But I see it so often because I'm aware and I'm not judging that man. I'm just like, he's at a different place. If he's open, I'd love to have a conversation with him, but I don't know that he's open in this specific moment. Like
Right.
right now, you just might need to be also at a place, which is why I exercise. You might need to protect your kids from somebody like that because they're not in the right frame of mind in that moment. Um, there's some psychology, like that's why we repeat ourselves over and over again. Like we're just looping, like you can't take in new information when you're in that kind of heightened emotional state and
Yeah.
you're just going full crazy. Like you're not having a reasonable conversation with that person at the moment. You might need to drop that dude on his butt, be like, back up from my kids. And like, I want to be able to run the full gamut where you need to, and just kind of go into the protector mode too, and be like, kids, get behind dad. I don't know how this is going to end, but this guy's not in his right mind. Like, it's kind of scary, but my brain works in some interesting ways. So we go out and walk, and the kids always make fun of me. Dad's at the back, mom's at the front, all the ducklings are in between. And they're like, I'm like, and then we reverse order. If there's a situation that we need to address, dad goes to the front, everybody else drops with mom, and we address the threat if we need to. But I think for them, I hope it gives them a little bit more peace of mind. They're like, do I hope that that happens? Absolutely not. But if it did, there's a plan, and I
Yes.
hope that they sleep a little bit better knowing that like this is what I'm thinking about, the ways that I can love you and protect you and serve you, and I hope that that's what they'll remember. Like they matter that much to me that that's where I spend my time. Not that it's like gone to complete mush with the endless levels of distraction that we have at our fingertips these days, or riddled with pornography, or riddled with all these other things. Like, right, that doesn't help me honor my wife or my children or show my daughters what kind of a man they need to chase. Like, but it's easy to go there for men. I get why they do it. We're carnal beings. I get why they do it. I'm not saying a man that's struggling with that doesn't have a real challenge,
Yeah.
but that's your battle, brother. Like that's what it is that you are meant to fight and to work through and to persevere so that you can show your kids a better path. So it's yeah, I don't even remember what the question was, but that got me on a
No,
good.
no, this is actually really great. I think you brought up something really amazing. Because we first started talking about your strengths, and then you kind of, again, your strengths take over in your passion. I think that your whole message here is true to who you are, and I absolutely love it, John. And one of the things you brought up, you mentioned, Italian food and kind of this, stigma that that people might have about a specific, whether if it's, ethnicity or gender. But one of the things and whether if it's a statistic that you mentioned about men and, this silence depression, or the reality, of me growing up in a home, in a very Latin macho man home that didn't express vulnerability, that did struggle big time with, I would say, silent depression, massive drinker. And a lot of my extended family, men, right, were very much this way. I think, if they saw me now, I'm the oddball, in
Yeah,
what I believe,
same.
what I pursue, and but the reality is, is that um, I think it is a real thing, and whether if it's something that's acknowledged or talked about, or again still silent amongst that, group, I think it's prevalent. I think it's very real. So, with that being said, and you obviously experiencing it in your own way, um, you do a lot, you accomplish a lot, you're in it a lot, and you're obviously, your message, you wear it on your sleeve.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously probably a lot of practice in doing what you do, so that it is there, right? Where sometimes some people keep it so bottled up. So in balancing all of that, what do you feel like, whether if it's been a framework, or maybe extending on your framework, or maybe a tool, but how have you been able to balance being so present, being so engaged when you are, right? There's so many things that you're doing, so many roles, and fighting a statistic of men in silent depression, which you and I talked a little bit about before. But how, because there's people out there struggling. Men are going to watch this, and I hope they do. And I can say this from, men in my own life, what are whether if it's a framework with the tools, how can they get out of this? What's the what's the hope? What can we do here? And I realize that's maybe another loaded question, and that's a very deep question. But I love that you're bringing it up, and I love that you acknowledge it. I love that you're aware of it. Maybe poking on that empathy of yours. But I think your mission, I think what you're saying, and I think what is very powerful. And if whether if we faced it or we see family members face it, and I know that again, going back to your real men events, you're it's very real. It's not a it's a very real thing. So in these moments and in this awareness, what is that thing that helps you stay above it, that helps you balance with all the different things that you're doing so that someone can get there or be there, or when they are struggling, they're like, man, I heard this thing that John said, and I'm
Yeah.
going to go do this because this is where I'm at and this is what I got to do.
So you're saying there's a message somewhere in all my mess.
There is, brother. There
Uh,
absolutely is.
the the thing I would say, first to a man that was right there, we talked about serving, and I believe that that's the great liberator for somebody that's truly, truly stuck. But yeah, this is good. It's getting me emotional, Philip. It's a good question. I would honestly just say, like, you've got to start telling yourself,
Hmm.
even if you don't believe it yet, you're enough. Like I'm not where I want to be, and it's okay. I'm still battling this, and it's okay. Like you're still fighting, you're still pushing forward, you're still giving it at least an effort, even if you know it's not your best effort. Like you're still there. And because you're still there, if that's true, then the truth has to be that there's still time to try to do something about it. And it may be a second marriage, and then you get a second opportunity. It may be a distant connection with your older child, and an opportunity to connect better with a younger child. Like there's gonna be lessons that just suck that you gotta push through and learn from. But those opportunities for your kids, I talk to my older kids a lot and recognize that I was a completely different father. I was not emotionally regulated. I very ego driven through my 20s and thought I had stuff to prove and making everybody happy and thought I was a good husband. I was a jerk. I was an idiot. I really didn't know what it was that I even needed to ask, let alone ask for help with. So it takes some bravery and courage to start to get to places where you're like, hey, today's not a good day. Like I'm not okay. If you want to see where somebody's at, I would challenge you guys to add one word to their question. Like, hey, how are you today? When you reach out to somebody, how are you today? Here's the text, comma, really, question mark, right? So you're gonna, how are you, Philip? Really? Like, there's something about that word that gives people permission to say, he's not gonna judge me. This is a good space. He's in a good space. Like it expresses a level of confidence. Like, I've got a little bit of room on my shoulder right here for you, Philip, that if you need to offload something right now, I can put that right here. So go ahead. Like, look, I can handle it. And I might give it back to you. I might need you just need me to carry it for a minute, and I might give it back to you. Um, Start there. Start telling yourself that you're enough, that you're okay, and constantly, some people call it prioritization, some people call it calibration. Prioritize and reprioritize the crap out of your day. If
Hmm.
you are not operating in a space that you want to be in, my guess is that if you were to rank your daily activities, whatever they are, whatever you do for work, is that you are operating somewhere in your ones to sevens, ones to sixes most of the day.
Hmm.
The sooner and the quicker that you can look at what really moves the needle in the direction that you want to be, I would call those kinds of activities. Some people say they're income producing, whatever it is. Whatever, it could be a spiritual goal, it could be a business goal, family goal, fitness goal, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, that's an 8 or a 9 or a 10 for you. And the more consistently that you can stay in that space and in that zone, game over. Like you will mold yourself into that new version of yourself. So get out of the lower vibration stuff. last night was the first night in a very long time my wife and I watched a movie. I fell asleep halfway through. It was like my body's done. Like I just need to sleep right now. I'm like, yeah, if she finishes it, that's on her. Like, but I know what I need. I've run this pace enough to know that like I'm good. By 10 to 10:30, I'm now compromising my 5:30 to 6 wake up time that I've committed to for myself. So the kids are like, "Oh, I want to stay up to a minute." And I'm like, "It's not New Year's Eve, and you guys know how dad works. So I love you. I'm going to it just makes me, you want me to be happy. You want to be like, no, we want to watch this movie. No, you want me to be patient. You want me to be present. You want me to be a good father. That's what you want. You think you want me to sit and watch this movie with you right now. And there's times that we do that. But I'm like, if you guys don't start it by 6:30 or 7, dad's out at 10 or 10:30, and that's okay. Like that's a boundary in my own family, but it's a respect for myself.
Yes.
So it's that is a deep, deep question. But I love, yeah, where that takes me, and it evokes some real emotion. So,
No, well, thank you. Thank you, John, for thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being willing. Thank you for being willing to, dive just a little deeper to help people understand. Again, the intention here is to, and for anyone watching, is for us to find hope and inspiration that regardless of our current circumstance, that's all it is our current circumstance,
yeah,
but that we can change that through implementing framework, tools, concepts, ideas, movement, service, right? All these great things that can, bringing God into what we do and how we do it. All of these things are for us to realize that in the moment of the circumstance, that we can make shift, we can make choices, we can do something different,
yeah,
and connect ourselves to the vision that we see, right? To connect ourselves to things. So I really appreciate you being so committed to that. It's not being committed to, I wake up at 5 a.m., I lift weights, and that's why I'm so successful, right? But it's being committed to the entire process of what helps you become aware of what do you need in that moment, right? When you talked about from the very beginning, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's resistance. But you're asking your body so many questions that when, just like last night, you guys are in the movie, you're like, hey babe, I'm done, right? I'm out, because you know yourself. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, going back to your awareness piece. If I'm just being a man in my own situation, and the opportunities of all the different interviews that I've done or people I get to talk to, that awareness piece is massive. And so many people don't take time to become really aware. They
yeah,
don't take time to forget about asking your spouse good questions. Have you asked yourself good questions?
yep,
And I think that awareness piece is massive, absolutely massive. And if we spend time asking more questions, then and we'd spend less time investing energy into things that don't give us the reward we're looking for, right?
yep. And that for me, the hyper awareness has come through the journaling. And
Right.
learning a lot. Like, right, I really learned a lot about myself when I started to put pen to paper, and it was weird and scattered at first and everything else. But then I was like, oh, I started to refine some questions. And I have moments where I call them letters to God, where it'll actually be like, we'll have a conversation like I'm talking to my father, who's
Sure.
still living. But I'm talking to my heavenly father. Like, it's a very spiritual experience and a conversation where I'm asking a question. Is this good? Am I on the right path? Is this like, I know the goal is purity, not not perfection. I know we're not gonna be perfected until this next hereafter. And am I on a path? Does this make you happy? Does this make you proud? Like, is this something that I'll look back on and be proud of? Like, is there shifts I need to make? Like, these questions are, they get specific, and then I'll sit and I'll listen and I'll write whatever comes to me, and I look back and I'm like, there's been a lot of times, and I'm like, that's not how I talk. That's not my typical like right candor or anything else. And I'm like, well, that was a pretty cool experience. Like whether it was just my brain coming up with all these random words or it was actually some direct inspiration, like it doesn't matter because it mattered to me. Like
Sure. Yes. Yes. Yes.
it
Yes.
mattered to me. So a lot of that hyper awareness for me, and I think that's one of the secret ways to get to know yourself is to actually start expressing yourself.
Mm.
Um, but that takes some courage. It does. You got to start being willing to be like, I tell my wife, hey, if I'm seeming like a jerk. That's not my intention. I'm a little bit more frustrated. Here's kind of what I'm handling today. I'm not asking you to take it from me. I'm not asking you to do anything with it. I'm just asking for a little bit of space and grace today.
Yeah, I like
I,
that. It's
I
great.
need it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, as we're wrapping it up here and ready to sign off with you, what would you leave as your, I guess just that last, that golden nugget? If, someone's walking away from this, they watch this interview, they're like, man, I love John. What would be that one golden nugget that you could leave for them that they could carry on, and take with them, whether they're something they apply, something they become aware of, something they do? What would that be? What would that golden nugget be that you'd want to leave for them?
Start with gratitude. It will change the rest of your life.
Ooh,
It will teach you to learn to let go. There is something that you are doing right now, or someone in your life, or something that you can be grateful for. Just start there, and you'll start to shift, and that gratitude will. I think that will change your life overnight. It did mine. That's one of the biggest things in my early 20s. You start to think about legacy, and legacy to me meant when I shared that story at the refinery, it was what do I even have to show for in my life? Like, what am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for? And when you start to ponder on those types of things, those bigger, more expansive things, you'll see just how lucky and blessed you are. And if you don't have a person or a thing or whatever, but like your health right now, the simple things, the food you had today, like it can seem simple and sometimes overly simple, but there is something that you can be grateful for right now. There is somebody that's blessed you. There is true power, and just really stepping into that gratitude and then trying to carry that throughout the day, holding a door for somebody. It doesn't matter if they say thank you or don't. Like you did it because you knew it was the right thing to do. Like you just start creating that cadence of these positive experiences in your life, and you'd be amazed at how that starts to reciprocate and then shape your path.
mm, man, I love it. Start with gratitude. Thank
Yes.
you so much, John. Thank you so much for being here today with me. Thank you for spending the time with me today. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you for those of you that have watched this interview. Please share it out, connect with him, follow him on Instagram. This is such a great thing to provide hope for people. And that's my goal. My goal is to do these interviews for you to be able to connect with people, connect with different individuals, different entrepreneurs, different people that are out there, engaged in life, have missions, have purpose, and ultimately provide more hope for the people that are stuck, right? They're stuck in maybe their 9 to 5, which is why they're looking at entrepreneurs. They're stuck mentally, emotionally, physically, and what are some of the people they can connect with in order to find hope and find inspiration? So thank you again for being here with me, John. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for all those that watched today, and have yourself a beautiful and blessed day. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.